This morning, we're going to look at the progress made in the fight against corruption generally in the country. This includes the Transparency International's Global Anti-Corruption Report for 2024, which scored Sierra Leone 33 out of 100, dropped by 2 points compared to the previous year, among other things this morning. To discuss this, we've been joined this morning by Edward B. Kuruma. Now, Edward is the acting Executive Director for Transparency International Sierra Leone. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Victor. Good morning, the people of Sierra Leone.
We're also expecting to be joined by Sylvanus Blake. Sylvanus is the Public Relations Officer at the Anti-Corruption Commission. Good morning again.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure having you.
Pleasure is mine.
What does this drop signify? It's 2% actually. Someone would say it's nothing. What is it?
Thank you very much, Victor, for taking us back to this very important assessment that is being done on an annual basis by Transparency International. I just want the listening audience to understand how we go about putting together the Corruption Perception Index report. The Corruption Perception Index report is one of the key studies that is being conducted by Transparency International, where they rank countries in terms of the progress they've made in the fight against corruption. And so this is not like a survey wherein you send boots on the ground, administer questionnaire, analyze the questionnaire, and then produce the report. What we do, because this is a global study and it's very expensive, you'll agree with me, to get people to go on the ground in all of those countries. So we look at credible reports that is being put together by institutions like the World Bank, Bertelsmann Foundation, and some other ones. So we look at what they've done, the analysis they've done, and we have certain indicators, that we consider when we do the assessment of these studies. And so we put together, we analyze the findings of those studies, and we use that one to rank countries. And so, like you rightly said, in the one that we launched this earlier this year, the 2024 one, Sierra Leone dropped 2 places down. And this, you can see, is 2 points, but is very, very significant for a country that has suffered, so much in terms of corruption, because most of the issues that we're grappling with as a country, the underdevelopment, the poverty status of people, is all hinged on the fact that corruption is rampant in Sierra Leone. So even 2 places backwards, is something that we need to consider. There are times when we move 1 place upward or 2 places upward, you will see, the fanfare that is being generated around it. So it means so much to us as a people who want to see corruption being put behind us. So this one is something that we need to consider very seriously as a country. It's telling us that corruption is still something, that we need to consider, and we need to make sure that we put, tangible and comprehensive approach in terms of fighting corruption. We know that we have the Anti-Corruption Commission that is the lead agency from the side of government in terms of fighting corruption. But one thing we must consider, or one thing we must understand, is the fact that the Anti-Corruption Commission, yes, is taking the lead in the fight against corruption. But when we put together, these findings, when we look at the studies being conducted by institutions, it is not only focusing on the commission itself and the activities of the commission. Yes, that could be considered, and that is something that could have contributed in making us move in 1 or 2 places in the past and all of that. But there are other institutions that we consider in the fight against corruption. One key institution is the Judiciary. The Judiciary has a very critical role in the fight against corruption. Mark you, when the ACC, because of the powers that they have now, they investigate and then they prosecute. Right. And when they prosecute, it is now left with the judge presiding over that matter to give the final judgment at the end of the day. If the judge feels or thinks that the evidence is not enough, then the case will be thrown out, or the person could be convicted. And so the court has a role to play. One, to ensure that they fast track, corruption cases. Yeah, it is good we have now an anti-corruption section, within the High Court. But we still have so many cases, in the courts that we need to fast track. And also, the outcome, of those cases are things that are being considered in the analysis. These are all indicators they looked at. It's not only the commission, the courts, the number of cases that they do have in court, and how long they take on a particular corruption case, the outcome of the corruption cases. All of these ones are indicators. So the judiciary also need to strengthen themselves, need to be proactive in handling corruption, and consider the effect of corruption on the people of Sierra Leone, and make sure that they take proactive steps in dealing with corruption cases. And what comes out at the end of the day is something that will serve as a deterrent for others not to think of being corrupt, because the laws gives the court the power to sentence, to fine, and you can do both at the same time. But most of the time, the decision of the court has been to fine people for being corrupt, and at the end of the day, people do pay those fines and they go scot-free. But because of the impact of corruption, and people want to see the court taking proactive steps against corrupt individuals, we would like to see custodian sentences. Because when you send somebody to prison, the freedom of the person has been seized, when the person comes out, they will have a rethink. And even those that are outside, they've seen Mr. A being treated this way for being corrupt, then it will serve as a deterrent for saying, I want to be corrupt, but the impact of me being corrupt is very serious. So let me do my work with integrity, transparency, and accountability.
Edward, for clarity, let's understand, what were the indicators that led to the 2 points decline?
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about now. One, I'm talking first of the institution. The judiciary is an institution that plays a critical role in the fight against corruption, and they are also considered, in this analysis. And an indicator that they look at is the number of cases that are still in court. They look at the number of years that these cases have taken in court, and then the outcome of these cases. These are some of the indicators that they look at when it comes to the judiciary. And the kind of mechanisms they have in place. Yes, we have one good one. We have the anti-corruption special court within the High Court. That is good. But how speedily, are cases being concluded? And what are the outcome, of these cases? These are things, that are being looked into. And another key institution in the fight that is considered in all of this is also Parliament. Parliament is also very, very key in the fight against corruption. Mark you, when we talk about the fight against corruption, we most of the time consider the public sector, the ministries, departments, and agencies. And year in, year out, we see the Audit Service Sierra Leone conduct audit and put out their audit report, with findings and recommendations. And the PAC in Parliament, that's the Public Accounts Committee, do have the responsibility to summon these officials within the MDAs to follow up on them in terms of the audit report. That takes us to the second level of the accountability process, which is very, very key. The first level is setting the standards. Now we have the laws, we have procurement law, we have anti-corruption law. These are all standards that people working in the public sphere should adhere to in terms of maintaining transparency and accountability, and for them not to be corrupt. So we have that. So the PAC takes us to the next level to ensure accountability, which is the answerability stage wherein you call officials to go to answer, for their actions and inactions. Right. And so the PAC, the Public Account Committee in Parliament, has a critical role to play to ensure that they bring these people to answer for their actions. And once that is being done, they need to put together the report, of the PAC's engagement, table that report in the well of Parliament. They discuss the report, and then the recommendations of those reports, when accepted by Parliament, is being implemented. But most of the time, the problem is the PAC is not very much proactive, in bringing these officials to Parliament and putting together the report and putting that report in the public domain and actions be taken.
What period did you?
I want to recognize the fact.
What period did you capture for the report? I ask this because most of what you've mentioned now are ongoing processes. You spoke about the judiciary. They currently have ACC cases there that they're still trying. For the Public Accounts Committee, what we saw under this new leadership of Parliament is they have been having sittings probing into the audit service report. So what period did you take into consideration for the assessment? Because these are ongoing processes. You would wonder, how did these ongoing processes lead to a 2-point decline?
Okay, thank you very much. So now, you did say this is an ongoing process, right? And when something is ongoing, they have certain levels that you need to accomplish whilst the thing is ongoing. But even when it's ongoing, you could see how often people are being summoned to Parliament and how the process unfolds. Yeah? And for that one, you could see whether it is slow, whether they are proactive, so you can say, even within a short period. So what I want to say here, I recognize the fact, that was what I was about to go to, recognize the efforts being made by the current leadership, Tawa, in terms of making the PAC very much proactive. So this study that we normally do, we say it's a yearly study. So this 2024 that was launched earlier this year, is the study covers January to December of 2024, and it's been launched in 2025. So that's the period for this particular study. So in as much as progress have been made, but we need Parliament to be very much proactive in terms of how often they bring these members to Parliament. You could see they don't have like a set timetable. Like for the budget discussion, maybe some of you have witnessed the budget discussion. They have a timetable. They say the A, B, and C is ministry or MDA, A, B, and C that will come on that day. So the committee has to look at the report, look at those key and burning issues, identify the MDAs, and then do like a timetable that will run maybe for a month, for example. Say on so and so date we'll have this MDA, and then we'll have the opportunity as the public to know that this MDA is coming up tomorrow, next week, and then we'll be able to follow up. But because they are not very much proactive in that, we are not seeing that happening. And in as much as this particular PAC has done so much in terms of bringing people to book, but the report also needs to be concluded and tabled in Parliament before actions have been taken. And that one takes us to the sanction part of accountability. And in Sierra Leone, that is where we have the challenge. We have the standards. We have the platform to get people to answer for what they have done, the PAC. But the sanction part is where the problem is. How can we get to the sanction? It is only when, at the answerability level, we conclude the findings, put together the report, make the recommendations, and then when the recommendations are acted upon, then we'll see people being penalized for being corrupt, and that will serve as a deterrent for others not to be corrupt. But because that area has so much challenges, that is the more reason why, in as much as people are trying, progress are being made, but people are still being corrupt. Because we say in a Creole, kill dog na dog make dog no say die day. But because people are not seeing others being seriously punished for being corrupt. So others think, yes, I can be corrupt, I can steal X amount of money. All I have to do is to like pay back in court, or the ACC will arrange an out-of-court settlement, and then I'll pay, and then I'll go scot-free. Even though there is 10%, the ACC will say,
Courts are
added to the money that is being stolen.
Kill dog before dog die. Let dog no say die day. This will lead me to my next question. As someone who works for an institution with utmost credibility, how would you, as a professional in that sector, grade, critique or analyze, if you like, the fight against corruption in Sierra Leone so far? Are we doing it right? A lot of people have criticized the fight, calling it cosmetic. Others have praised it, eulogizing the leadership of the Anti-Corruption Commission to being one of the best we've had so far in Sierra Leone. Where do you stand?
Looking at the fight against corruption in Sierra Leone generally, I would say we've made some progress, yeah? But considering the serious impact of corruption in Sierra Leone, I think we have not done much. More needs to be done in terms of fighting corruption. Like I said, the commission is doing their own bit. But it's not only the Anti-Corruption Commission, their actions and operations that is being considered when they do these international studies and analysis. Other institutions are being considered.
You mentioned the judiciary and the parliament.
The judiciary, parliament, even office of the president, you know, you're talking about also the HRMO, how people are being recruited. All of these things are being considered, and that is out of the purview of the Anti-Corruption Commission. So this is telling you that if we are to succeed or make meaningful steps in the fight against corruption, there is got to be collaboration and cooperation between and among state institutions. That is why it saddens me some time back when there was this tussle between PAC and ACC with regards who should act on the audit report first. But if we are doing this for the good of the people of Sierra Leone, if that's the focus of both institutions, that should be the bigger picture. And that is what they should look at. So we want to see collaboration and cooperation in the fight against corruption. That is lacking, and that is a serious challenge, because you have several institutions that we consider when we look at the fight against corruption. So if we want to make meaningful steps, there should be collaboration and cooperation. Then also, the ACC, yeah, they are making progress in the fight against corruption with what that now we have laws that gives the ACC more powers from 2008, the revised anti-corruption law, and then the 2019 amendment now gives the commission the powers to like do out-of-court settlement. I want to say that in itself is not a bad move, because you have international instruments that makes provision for asset recovery and doing this kind of settlement as a way of recovering assets. The UNCAC, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, makes provision for that. The African Union Convention on the Prevention of Corruption makes provision for that. The ECOWAS Protocol makes provision for asset recovery, and in Sierra Leone, that amendment in 2019 gives the ACC the power, as we are domesticating that one, to do out-of-court settlement. But there is something in that the ACC needs to consider.
What is it?
Yeah. Now, when you do the out-of-court settlement, for example, somebody has stolen money in a particular institution, and then the money is like 800 million, for example, and then the person is asked to pay back. Yeah, you settle the matter, the person paid 800, and there is a 10% addition to what you've stolen as a way of that one serving as a deterrent. But also, the law gives the commission the powers to recommend administrative actions against these individuals. For example, the person can be banned from taking public office for a number of years. The person salary the commission could request that they withhold the person's salary for a couple of months or a year and all of that. But that side, we are not seeing it much in terms of out-of-court settlement, because 3 people can be involved in corrupt practice, and then they will say, okay, the 2 of them should be suspended for 1 month. And then maybe the 3rd person, because it's not very much involved in the transaction, you'll pay the money and then you continue working. That, as an activist, that is something we should not tolerate. Because once you've involved in corruption, you are involved in corruption, you must face the penalty. So getting some people to just pay and go back based on the gravity of their involvement, the bottom line is they are involved in corruption. So even after paying, other administrative action could be taken. Then also in terms of asset recovery, the commission takes this money from people. The last time we see the commissioner displaying, billions of leons, old leons, that is being recovered from corrupt individuals. Now, in the asset recovery regime, the recovery of the asset is one, but another thing that is very, very critical is how these recovered assets are being managed. So even if you recover billions of leons and then you don't have policies or mechanisms as to how you manage those resources, there is the tendency for those corrupted money to be re-corrupted again.
To be stolen, you mean?
Yeah, maybe. Yes, because it is not well managed. So
do you think that's the case at the moment?
In asset recovery, you need to ensure that you have a management policy. But because there is no management policy, what happens? According to the law that we have now, the commission retrieve those monies from corrupt individuals, and what happens? Check is being made, and they present that check to the president. That is what the law says. And the president is expected to pay those money into the consolidated fund. And once those monies are being paid there, it's in a one pot. You will not be able to know that this particular money was money that was retrieved, from corrupt individuals. So if at the end of this month, the Ministry of Finance is looking for money to pay salaries, they just go to the one pot, then just take. So even those monies are all part of the ones that are being used by government.
In essence, you're saying this money can be stolen without...
So what we are saying is...
Without being discovered, you mean?
I'm not saying the money could be stolen. It could be used for another purpose. Now, when the ACC started presenting this check to President, President made a pronouncement. He says this money that is being recovered from corrupt individuals will use it as a government to construct a diagnostic center at Kerrytown so that our people cannot be traveling to China or Ghana, for medical purposes. But up to this time, Victor, Fabian, do we have a foundation started there? There's no physical evidence.
So where are these monies?
Fine. The reason being, the money is always paid into the consolidated fund, one pot, and they will just take it to do other things. So what we want to see, if the people are to benefit from the actions of the commission or in the fight against corruption, this is why many times the people ask the question, what are we benefiting as a people in the fight against corruption? Oh, they are saying the ACC is doing well in the fight against corruption, but that is not translating, into the lives of us Sierra Leoneans. That is what people are saying. So, what we are saying, the commission need to recommend to government, even though your legal mandate is to present, but to give credence or credibility to the work that you are doing, for people to see really that your work translates into their life, recommend to government that this money that we are presenting, let's have a kind of trust fund, or even within the one port, which is an account, we have this funds being ring-fenced, that all monies gotten back from corrupt individuals are put into this one, but it's ring-fenced, and this one will be used, for developmental purposes that will better the lives of Sierra Leoneans.
But because that is lacking. But the money, the money that has been brought back into the system.
Yeah.
These were, if you trace the problem back to when the Corrupt Act was identified, these were sent or disbursed to address certain problems. So some of those developmental activities were put on hold or stalled because of corruption. What happened to recovering that money if, for example, Mr. A stole money that was meant to procure drugs for the public health sector, using the money to go back now and procure the drugs that were not procured, using the recovered money for its intended purpose it was stolen initially?
Thank you very much. That could be something that you could do, and then you can pinpoint that, yes, we are fighting against corruption. We had some corrupt individuals. There's money, we are taken back from them, and now we've built the hospital that this was meant for. We've procured the drugs that this was meant for. Now also, mark you, according to the law that we have now, an additional 10% of the money stolen is being paid by the individual. So that 10% is there also floating. You understand? So if
not
we
necessarily floating per se, the 10%, because it depends on when the Corrupt Act was done, the value of the money then, and the value of the money at the time when it was repaid. So a common example could be if the money was meant to build a school, and then 10 years later you're caught, let's say 4 years later you're caught, you pay back. The cost of a bag of cement then and the cost of a bag of cement now isn't the same. So the 10% itself cannot just be dished out to do something else, when in actual fact, depending on when the act took place and when the money was recovered, there could be a gap to be covered in the value of the money in funding the intended project.
Yeah, you're quite right, Amphibian. Yeah, but no matter what, there could be still, some amount of money, even if you plow back those money into certain activities, but still there could be certain amount that could be used for maybe some community development or this Terrytown thing that we're talking about. Now, one thing we should understand in this asset recovery thing, it's not just from the resources or the monies recovered from people. Now, sometimes when they take individuals to court, and then people are fined outside the amount of money, and then they could not pay, they confiscate, the court order confiscation, and then they can liquidate those properties, and then the money goes back into the consolidated fund. So those money from the commission, from the courts, even at international level, asset recovery makes provision for you to get back assets, movable assets, monies from even overseas back into the country. And so if we are able to really maximize the asset recovery regime by having in place proper policies and proper laws, we would be able to make so much money from recovered assets. Now, there was an example in Kono. ACC did an investigation, and then there was an hotel in Kono, and they asked, who is the owner of this hotel? Nobody came out to say he or she is the owner, because they believe it's corrupt, shown related. So what happened? The court order for the confiscation, and then the hotel is still there. And now, currently, the hotel is being used as a secretariat of the Kono University. And even some people, in the government arena, even within the, don't even know about the outcome of that institution. So if of that building. So if there is transparency and accountability in the process, people should know, the people of Sierra Leone should know. So now we've confiscated this property, and now we've leased this property, for example, to the Kono University, if it is being leased, for X amount of money. So where is that money going to? So the money we are talking about that could be ring-fenced or a trust fund developed is not only from those recovered by the Anti-Corruption Commission, but all other ones from the courts, and overseas, and all of that. So all of those monies could go into that trust fund, and we could use it for these other developmental activities.
It's unfortunate that the ACC rep that was invited hasn't shown up, because these are questions that they also need to answer. But quickly before we go to Studio 2 for sports, In 2018, when President Leo won the elections for his first term, during the inauguration ceremony, he said he was going to wage 3 wars. Amongst those 3 was corruption. So far, so good. How would you assess the president as an individual, his fight against corruption, how he has handled some of these corruption-related allegations and issues connected to corruption? How would you assess the president as an individual, his fight against that war he said he was going to wage against corruption?
Yeah, thank you. The president is very, very key in the fight against corruption. That is why when we're talking about institutions, that is just one aspect, but also we have what we call the political will in the fight against corruption. Because normally in the fight, we consider 3 wills that are very key: the political will, the institutional will to fight corruption, and the people's will. So the president, when you talk about the political will, is the first person that we consider. And like you said, he made that those pronouncements when he took up office to wage war against corruption. Yeah? And the president...
Has he been waging the war?
The president needs to do more. Yes, to an extent, I would say, because like the ACC, you know, is doing its work and they're having some support, you know, from the government in terms of doing their job, though they need more resources to like cover, you know, the entire Sierra Leone and make a meaningful impact. But the president needs to do more in the fight against corruption, because the president is the fountain of honor, is our beacon of hope. So if we are talking about fighting corruption that has been a menace in Sierra Leone, he has to stand tall, you know, to say or do certain things in terms of fighting corruption.
What more is he to do?
For example, some time back, we had this issue of the audit report, you know, the Auditor General and Deputy being suspended in relation to audits being conducted in the office of the president. And there are some findings, yeah? And the problem, according to what was happening, is the fact that the Auditor General contacted a third party, you understand, to verify certain receipts without going back to the client, that is the office of the president, which they say is a breach of protocol or whatever. That aside, I'm not questioning that one, because they've gone through all the processes and they say the lady is guilty and all of that. But what we are saying, after that one has been done, but the fact still remains that there was an identification of a fake or a forged receipt. So what has been done to go back? Let's forget about Lara and a deputy, yeah, and the breach of protocol. But let's look at that issue. So the president could have said, okay, yes, Lara violated protocol. Let's accept that. But I want to see investigation being done within the office so that we'll identify whether or not receipt was really forged, and those responsible would be brought to book. Right. And once you stand tall in taking some of those actions, you know, it will go a long way for you to put, you know, action into your proclamation as a president. We know that the president has a lot to do. That's why in issues you have like advisor to the president on disability issues, on gender issues, but we don't have advisor to the president on corruption per se. So the commission, yeah, is relied upon to even advise the president. So even when the commission is presenting to the president like checks, yeah, based on the law, but the commission could not just say that, yeah, our mandate stops here just for us to present, and then we take the back seat.
You think they don't know all of these
could
things?
Recommend to the president, advise him, yes, Mr. President, you've said this in the past, so I think we should have like a trust fund wherein we could make
Do you think they don't know these things?
Yeah, so the president himself, because there was an issue that somebody says that when somebody were being investigated, they set them aside, like the former Minister of Basic Education, yeah, when they investigated for the rise. And now the ACC is investigating the Minister of Gender Affairs, and she's still in office. We were in a discussion the last time on 98, and the question was asked, why are you guys still having that person in office and you did not, set that person aside? The excuse was the president appointed that person and he is the one that is supposed to set that person aside and not the commission. So what I'm saying is that that's the mandate of the president. But for the work that you do, because that's the more reason why people are thinking that the commission is cherry picking, looking for if this person, then we take this action. If not this one, no. So
but
if they are saying it's the mandate of the president.
Based on advice, when it comes to Paran's situation in Parliament, ACC says though they could not get the evidence they needed, but they're still not convinced that Paran was unaware of his wife's status as a staff of Parliament, but they had left it up to the president to make a decision. What's your perspective on how that matter was handled? With all that happened publicly, the president still went ahead to get Paran to go back to work.
So, like I said, even Parliament has a role to play. The PSC is one, and also the administration of Parliament. They want to see Parliament being run in a transparent and accountable manner. So if we are having corruption issues within Parliament, like that, all that once contributed to us being ranked the way we've been ranked from the last corruption perception index. So I believe that the SEC, even though according to their mandate, that is what they should do, but they could recommend that, Mr. President, we are investigating and up to now we've not found whatever, but we are recommending that you set this man aside, while the investigation is going on. Because the president maybe could set this one, which is not good. If you done this one for John, you do it also for Mary.
How realistic is this possibility that, given the context of our society, it's the president who appoints the anti-corruption commissioner? These people currently in office are also people who are the president's people. Many of them are SLPP people or people the president has been convicted that he needs to appoint. How realistic is it for the ACC to come up with a recommendation to say to the president, set Mr. A or Miss Y apart while we do this? Isn't it easier for the ACC to do that for opposition people than it is for the ACC to do it for people serving in the current government, where the president did the appointment of the commissioner and those other people serving in these capacities?
Right. So this is where integrity comes in, and independence. In as much as, according to our laws that we have now, our constitution, the president has these powers. We cannot reverse that because that's the way it is for now, to make those appointments and all of the things that it would do. But what we are saying, if the commission is supposed to be an independent commission, yeah? And they must carry out their functions with utmost integrity, and they should look at the bigger picture and not party political sentiment or regional sentiment or whatever. So we are expecting the commission that no matter who is involved, they should uphold integrity and make sure they make the proper and the correct recommendation, so that the people of Sierra Leone will see that we have the institutional will on the part of the Anti-Corruption Commission in fighting corruption in Sierra Leone. Let them make that recommendation, and the president refused to take action on that. But on their part, they've done what they are supposed to do. The president has the final say, right? So if he could adhere to the recommendation, if he could not, but yes, still, let them go a step further, being proactive. In this fight now, we need to be very much proactive, irrespective of whatever sentimental connections that you have.
Is it possible for your recommendation to be acted upon, given that the current ACC commissioner is not only very close to the president, but the president is his mentor?
Well,
and doing that could also set the president up to take actions that would put him in a tight spot. Is it realistic under the current?
Well, I don't think if a president takes action like that for somebody who's been investigated for being corrupt, setting the person aside, and he has done that in the past for other people. So he could do the same again. So making that recommendation, you see, I'm not looking
at... Is it signifying that the president has sacred cows?
Well, I'm not looking at the connection that the Ben Kelfala has with president or whatever. What I'm looking at is a commissioner working in an independent anti-corruption commission that is supposed to uphold independence and integrity in the work that he's doing, and make sure that he makes recommendation, to the president in order to make the fight more robust and for people to see that the commission is really doing their job, and that what they are doing is like translating into the lives of Sierra Leoneans.
Edward, we are closing off. What would you recommend at this stage? We've discussed more or less the intricacies surrounding corruption and the deficiencies that are strangling the fight against corruption. What tangibles would you proffer?
One key thing that we need to consider if we are to make meaningful and tangible steps in the fight against corruption is to ensure that we have proper collaboration and cooperation among those institutions, that I highlighted earlier on, like Parliament, the Judiciary, even Office of the President is being looked into how transparent and accountable the Office of the President is in this corruption perception index study that we do, even Parliament, transparency and accountability and all of that. So it's very, very key that we consider that one. Then also it is very, very key, for us to ensure that we do intensify the public education. Not the public education on what is corruption or for them to report corruption, but also we want to see the people fully on board in the fight against corruption. So the people needs to know how protected they are if they report corruption. So we're telling them to raise the flag, blow the whistle, but they need to know how protected they are. As of now, we do not have like a stand-alone law on whistleblower protection, but within the current act we have a provision that talks about whistleblower protection, and even some incentive to somebody who blows the whistle against corruption is within the law. So people need to know about all those provisions so that they will be confident to like come out and speak up, and blow the whistle, raise the red flag, against corruption. So all of those things are very, very key. So the commission also needs to be more proactive. That is why we serve in the steering committee of the National Anti-Corruption Strategy, the rolling out of that one. So some of these things we do bring up in our meetings. So that is why we are there to like work with the commission to make the fight very, very much proactive. So we need everybody to come on board. The political will needs to be there, not only by making pronouncement, but also by taking tangible action for people to see, that we really serious about the fight against corruption. The institutions must be willing and ready to put systems in place to ensure that we fight corruption. Now, one thing that has been coming out is the fact that year in, year out, the same recommendations have been profiled by the audit report, and people are not doing what they're supposed to do in terms of implementing these recommendations. And most of the time, the MDs would say they don't have resources for that within their budget line. And some of these things they could do without even spending a dime, just like mobilizing the internal audit and ensure that they follow processes and procedure. And now, very soon, there's a budget called circular will go out to MDAs. The one for the local councils, I think, is out already. So I want to employ on the Ministry of Finance, because we are all in this, for them to ensure that in the budget called circular that is sent to MDAs, because they tell them to have like 5 deliverables that will cover their activities when they present their budget. Let them emphasize in that budget called circular that one deliverable should speak on the implementation of audit report. So once it is in the deliverable and your budget is being approved, you will have lines for certain activities to implement. So if we start doing these tangible things, we will see progress being made in the fight against corruption.
Edward B. Kuruma, Acting Executive Director, Transparency International. Thank you very much indeed for being part of Wake Up Sierra Leone today.
It's a pleasure.